Hi, this is Julie Lubinsky. I'm the Associate Director of Digital for the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation, and I'd like to welcome you all to the third series in our government benefits webinars, and this one is about saving money with the ABLE account. And Marianne Eller will be your host today. She's a financial professional. She is also a mother, a sister, and a daughter to her loved ones with disabilities. She is highly regarded as a specialist in working with families of individuals with disability and the elderly, and speaks to conferences and television audience on financial planning. So now I'd like to turn it over to Marianne. Hello, Marianne.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well.
Good.
Thanks for joining us today.
I'm glad to be here. Okay, so we are going to get started talking about the ABLE account, and some of you may have heard about this and some of you may have not. So I'm going to take it as a primer to make sure that I'm covering the basics. And just to give you an overview a little bit is we have done some other presentations about benefits and things like that that are really important to our family members with a disability. But up to this point in history, the only thing a person with a disability, if they were going to apply for SSI and Medicaid, could have in their name was a house, a car, a prepaid funeral, and $2,000. So there was a $2,000 limit hanging over our heads for years. But then along came the ABLE Act. And this was some legislation that was passed, and it took some time. There were several years, many years actually, where we were trying to find a way that families who had a family member with a disability could save for them beyond that $2,000. And we had already talked about trusts and things like that. So there's legal things that you can do to save money if you pass away. But there was never any way that you could actually have current savings set up that wasn't in a trust. And it just didn't make sense because there was ways for us as parents to save for our children for college. There's many other ways. So this ABLE Act came around, and there were many versions of it, and there were many not-for-profit and for-profit organizations and attorneys and support organizations working on this legislation to allow the families to save. And that's how it came about. But when it finally got designed, and the government looks at it and says, what's this going to cost us, because it was tax-free savings, it was too expensive. And so it kept getting revised and revised until we have what we have today, which is really a pretty good tool. And it's really a tool for us to use. So I'm going to make sure that we cover, I wanted to have you get some history as to how this came about. It didn't just happen overnight, it was many years. But the purpose of it is to encourage families, as well as the individual with a disability, to save in private funds for that family member so that there is money there to be used for basics, over and above basic support, and some of it is actually also for basic support, that allows them to have those funds accessible to them. So with that, let's get on board as to talking about how this came about. The ABLE Act recognized through much discussion that the cost of living with a disability was greater than the cost of living without a disability. So here everybody could save, but the person with a disability is not able to save for themselves, and families weren't able to save for them. And all they were able to have before was the $2,000. This is going to allow them to be able to have more than the $2,000 in their name and to be able to invest it. And it will not count against them. So some very basic rules. I'm going to go through some basic things. I'm going to go through the details of each of these. First, it's tax-free savings. Second, it's to be used for only approved expenses, which we'll discuss. I'm just going to give you the highlights first. The onset of disability must have occurred prior to age 26. And so that is a limiting factor that we need to understand. There's only one ABLE account per qualified person. So a person has a disability, they're going to have one of these accounts. The annual amount you can put in is the federal gifting amount, and there's a maximum amount that can be put in by state. Those are the basic general rules. Now don't worry, you don't have to remember all of that because I'm going to go through each of those different steps. So let's talk about each one. Tax-free savings. It's very similar to the 529. So if you're familiar at all, because this was a modification to the 529 Act, where I said it started and had its own legislation, and it changed until finally it came about that it was a modification to the legislation that passed the 529. And the process of getting that created was when they passed that at the federal level, then each state also had to approve it at the state level, because 529s are federal programs but administered by each state. So I will tell you that the federal government approved it. How it was going to play out then had to go to each state, and each state had to determine if they were going to offer it and if they were going to have certain rules about can you use it if they're in their state, or if somebody from another state can use theirs as well. So each state has their own rules. On top of that, how some certain things work within it by state are different. So we'll get into some of that, and I'm going to give you resources so that you can research your own state and how it compares state to state. But the 529 for college savings is tax-free. So when you put money in, it's tax-free, meaning the earnings in it are not taxed. So if I put $100 in, whatever that $100 invested earns will not be taxed to me. If it's used for approved expenses, when it comes out, the earnings is not taxed. So I put $1,000 in, and I earn over time $100. When I take the whole thing out, I don't have to pay tax on the $1,000 I originally put in, but I also don't have to pay tax on the earnings because I used it for an approved expense. Now, if you, just like college savings, if you don't use a college savings account for college expenses, approved college expenses, you have to pay a penalty. That's how these work, because they follow in that legislation. So if I put money into an ABLE account, and I don't use it for the approved special needs disability approved expenses, then when I take it out and I use it for something else, I will have to pay tax on that growth, but I will also have a 10% penalty on the growth. So my original example was I put $1,000 in and I earn $100 over time, and then I take it all out. If I use it, no tax, no penalty. If I don't use it for approved expenses, but something else, then I would have to pay tax on the $100, and I'd have a 10% penalty on the $100 or another $10. Okay? That's kind of the basic concept of the tax-free savings. I will tell you, in reality, unless somebody is funding it at great levels, they won't see the tax-free savings as a significant positive of this. It's a positive, but it's not the reason a lot of people do it originally. Having taxes drive all our decisions is usually not a good thing anyway, but it's a good positive benefit. So what's that used for only approved expenses mean? Well, remember the $2,000 that a person can have and get their government benefits is over and above that full amount they can have. All of a sudden they can have this account. So the money in this account can be used for education, it can be used for housing, it can be used for transportation, employment training, assistive technology, we see it being used a lot for that, personal support services, you need additional healthcare expenses, support services, financial management, and administrative expenses. Those are just a few examples. And when you go to the website that I'm going to give you later, you'll see all the list of things. So again, this is a tool, but it gives you a sense of how broadly this can be used. If I look back at when this legislation first came out and what we understood about it, this piece was not very clear. It's become clearer and clearer. And when we talk about how it compares later to what a special needs trust can do, you'll find that this is broader than a special needs trust in most cases. Okay, so this is something that is a limiting factor right now. If the disability, the onset of the disability must have occurred prior to age 26. So when you open an account, it's going to ask you that. When does disability start? And the criteria to do that is if you're entitled to SSI, or if you're entitled to SSDI, Social Security Disability, or your disability is on the compassionate allowance list, or you can self-certify. So if you're setting this account up and you know the person is getting SSI or SSDI already, and they were getting it before the age of 26, you will find that they qualify. To self-certify, there isn't a lot of validation of that. If somebody says, yes, my disability started before the age of 26, it will go through the process. This is all online. It will go through the process and let you open an account. Later on, if they do audit it and your disability started after the age of 26, you would not be able to use this. So they would come back and say, okay, this is not a qualified account. This is a limiting factor for many of the people who perhaps are on this call. But I will tell you there is some legislation on the table, and we don't know where it's going to go. But there have been discussions about getting that age to an older age. The reason it started that way is they were trying to avoid people in the senior category using this as a way to shelter funds when they were needing nursing home care. But there are many, many disabilities that occur after age 26 where this would be a useful tool. So we'll see where that goes into the future, but that is where the rule is today. Okay, some other basics. One account per person, one ABLE account per person. What does ABLE stand for, first of all? Achieving a better life expectancy. That's what the ABLE stands for. And we want to make it really clear that a person with a disability can only have this one account. You can't set one up yourself and then have your parents set one up and have a grandma set one up. For college savings accounts, and I refer to that amount, that 529, because it's part of the 529 legislation. If you had a college savings account, a person can have 3 college savings accounts. That is not true with an ABLE account. The ABLE account, if I set one up for my son, he can only have that account. No one else can set one up. He can't set one up for himself. He can only have that one account. The most that can be put into an ABLE account in any one calendar year is $15,000 currently. It says 2018 and it hasn't changed. So it's $15,000 that can go into, it's the annual gifting amount that can go into an account. It was 14 when this started, and then 2018 came along and that amount got increased. The maximum that could go into an account overall is by state. So in my state, the maximum in Illinois is $300,000. So there's never going to be $300,000 more than that in an ABLE account. Now, if you think about it, it's going to take a while to get there, whatever your state amount is, the plan you're using. But because we can only put $15,000 a year in, it would take a very long time to get that amount. The stock market would have to be doing pretty fantastic to have it get to $300,000 quickly. We all wish that would happen, right? Okay. So what is this thing? When it first came about, there was a lot of discussion about how it was going to be used. And is it going to replace the Special Needs Trust? And what's it all about? So so there's a lot of discussion from the attorneys who help families to the Special Needs Trust, because we didn't want you to think about this as a replacement of that. It is not. If you can only put $15,000 in this at any one time, it's certainly not replacing a Special Needs Trust that allows someone to leave an inheritance to you in that trust with a lot of money in it. Okay, this is purely a tool that we're going to use in many different situations to allow a person to have some flexibility with their financials and having money accessible to them. Okay, this ABLE account is actually owned by the person with a disability. A Special Needs Trust is different, and then the account is controlled by someone else, and the person with a disability benefits from it but doesn't control it. In this account, the person with a disability is actually owning this account. So it's a flexible account. Now, we use it for many different kinds of people with disabilities. In this situation, I would say there's a lot of people who have a disability that can certainly manage this account themselves. They developmentally are fine, but physically are not. If we're dealing with a person with a developmental disability, usually there's someone else on the account who will help them manage it. So because it's a very flexible tool for the different types of individuals with a disability, it makes sense to understand how you will use it. It makes sense in certain situations it's a great tool, but I also find it's a way to also get into trouble if you don't understand the rules. So I'm going to make really sure during this webinar that you understand the pros of having the tax-freeness and having been able to have money in your name, but also the places you can get into trouble. So what isn't it? Well, it's not for everyone. It's not the same as the 529. If you don't have a disability before the age of 26, you can't use it. It does not replace a special needs trust, and it doesn't allow those big pots of money. So when I'm looking at someone who has a disability and they need funding, as I'm doing projections to say, okay, this person needs X amount over and above their government benefits to help themselves, and it's going to be more than anybody could put away at $15,000 a year. That certainly isn't this tool. This is what I need today tool, for the things that I'm going to need not only today, but in the short-term future. But it's certainly not going to be the $1 million account that someone might need to take care of their future. So it's different than the 529, okay? How is it the same? Because most people know college savings accounts. They've heard of them. It's the same as that it's tax-free if it's used correctly, and that the state controls it. The state determines what investment choices you have inside of it. It's different in that you can only have one account and one ABLE. You have an annual contribution limit, and that's all you can put in 1 year, whereas the 529 allows us to fund the first time up 5 years of funding. We cannot do that with this account. Okay. A question came and I'm going to answer it as I'm going on. So if someone breaks their neck at age 40 and is 100% disabled after, they are not eligible for an ABLE account. That is a correct statement, okay, for now. I'm not going to say that that is going to continue, and we're hoping that that age will change with some legislation. But as today, as the law stands, that is a true statement. Okay, I'm sorry to say that. Okay, so within some of the things that we talked about in the past, I'm just going to correlate and try to make this fit into some of those things that we've talked about. And hopefully everyone is hearing this okay. Someone did say the audio is cutting in and out, so I'm hoping that this is clear. Okay, if you're not hearing this well, please type a note in, and we'll see if we can do something about that. Okay, so old rules, old tools. So government benefits, there's SSI and Medicaid, and those have income rules of how much we can make and asset rules. This is where this account helps. The SSDI, Social Security Disability, and Medicare, those two benefits don't have any asset rules of how much we can have. Okay? So this doesn't help with the income. If I make too much money because I have a disability, this doesn't stop that. It only helps on the asset side. So when I'm dealing with SSI and Medicaid, it helps that I can put money aside and have more money. Okay? All right. The good thing is when somebody's on SSI and Medicaid and they have a limitation in assets, it lets them save while they're on that benefit. And then later on, if they go into disability, SSDI and Medicare, that asset limit won't change, but they'll be able to have this account as well. The other old rule is the special needs trust. So that's been around for quite some time. And you can see that there's two kinds of special needs trusts. One is for other people's money, the one on the left, and the one on the right is the first party trust. That's for when you get money by mistake or you get a settlement, it goes into that right side. And many of the cases we're talking about, families who might be on here might have a first party trust where they got a settlement. Those accounts can have as much money that goes into them. There's nothing that's limiting benefits in any way. These aren't controlled by the person with the disability. So these still exist. We are not replacing them. The ABLE is just a nice tool to help us fill in the gap. But do pay attention to the bottom of these trusts. This third-party trust is a trust that is funded by parents. That trust, or by family or grandparents, that money in the special needs trust is used for the person, is not controlled by the person with a disability. It is for their benefit. And when they pass away, so if I set up a trust for my son, and when I pass away I put money into that trust, it's used for my son's care, and when he passes away it goes to heirs or charity of my choice that I designate. You'll see that at my son's passing it would go directly to other people. The payback trust, and this is an important concept that I want you to understand because we're going to get into some payback discussion. So let's say my son inherits some money or gets a settlement from an accident. And so that money goes into this trust. He gets to keep his government benefits, but when he passes away, there will be a reimbursement to the state for benefits paid during his lifetime, and then the rest goes to heirs. Very big difference between the two kinds of trusts. And then we get into place of how an ABLE acts in this situation as well. So I created a little chart, and I hope this will help you understand how this works. Okay? I've created 4 columns. The first column is the individual, and across the top is I'm talking about the person with a disability, their own name, a third-party special needs trust, a first-party trust, and then the ABLE account on the far right. So what's the maximum amount you can have in each of these accounts and still get your SSI? Okay? If it's the money's in their own name, it's $2,000. That's it. And they can also have a house and a car in a prepaid funeral. But in their savings account or checking, they can only have $2,000. How much could a person have in a third-party special needs trust and keep their SSI? It's unlimited. Same with a first-party trust, unlimited. The ABLE account, the most you can have, and this is a really important point, to keep SSI, the most you can have in an ABLE account is $100,000. That is one of the limiting factors of the ABLE account. Yes, I said in Illinois, I'm going to use my state as an example. My state allows $300,000 in an ABLE account. But the ABLE says if you have more than $100,000, your SSI will be suspended. Not cut off, but suspended until the account goes below $100,000. So if somebody is getting SSI, we have to keep in our mind that that $100,000 is the max we can have. Now, at some point in the future, they come off of SSI and go into Social Security Disability, either because they are doing a little work and they move into that, or they become eligible for DAC benefits, which is a disabled adult child, someone who had a disability when they were young and got it on a parent's record for some reason. Then that they go into a different benefit, or they go into Social Security of their own. That limitation would no longer exist at the $100,000. How much can you put into each of these accounts? Well, individual's name, there is no maximum. You just want to keep it below the $2,000. There's no limit to how much you can put in the special needs trusts. But the ABLE account, the maximum a person can contribute to my son's special needs trust is the federal gifting amount, which we said is $15,000 a year. What can we use this money for? What are the allowable expenditures out of each of these accounts? Well, if my son has money in his name, it can be used for anything that he needs. Okay, anything. There's no limit. The third-party trust is anything for the benefit of that person, and first-party trust is anything for the sole benefit. So what's the difference between benefit and sole benefit? So let's say my son is disabled, and I've set up a third-party trust for him, and I put money into it. But he also has a first-party trust from a settlement. The third-party trust, he could go on vacation, could pay for his vacation, and could pay for a traveling companion. The first-party trust, it could pay for his vacation, but not the traveling companion. So sole benefit, it has to be solely for him. Now, ABLE account, it must be a disability-related and on the list of expenditures. So could it pay for a vacation? Yes. It doesn't say sole, so we have to go back to that disability-related expense. So I would say the ABLE account has a broader expenditure limit. Okay. I'm not going to go into all the tax rules. Just know that the ABLE account, you will not pay tax on the earnings as long as you use it for the proper expenditures. Is there any reporting? So individual's own name, there's no reporting of what's in your account or your third party or first party. However, you do have to tell Social Security. They always want to know how much you have in your bank account if you have benefits. And on the first party trust, they can ask at any time what's in that. The ABLE account works like the 529. Could the IRS come back and say, okay, how was that money spent so we know you didn't have to pay tax on it? They could. Okay. Do the government agencies who administer Social Security sometimes ask for statements? They do. I will tell you they do. Okay. A few other comments to try to make it clear. Okay. Just a quick note that there was if you're having any issues with your audio, there was a note in the chat box that there's a new phone number and participant codes you could call on them. Want to make sure everybody can hear. Okay, third-party special needs trust, parents' money. Let's talk about where does the parents' money go? So if I have the disability, okay, and my parents want to help me, they can put money into a third-party special needs trust. Okay, that's where parents' money would go. Parents' money would not go into a first-party special needs trust. That's where the person with the disability's money goes. There are pooled trusts, and those are just trusts that are administered sometimes by charities that we could use a third-party trust. Parents' money also can go into the ABLE account. Okay? So when I say parents, it could be anybody's money, but I'm not, so if I'm the person with the disability, okay, I would be able to put money into the ABLE account, but anybody around me could also put it in. So I'm talking about my money, person with a disability. When I talk about PWD, that's me, let's say I'm the disabled person, okay? My money would either go into a first-party special needs trust, or a first-party pooled trust, or an ABLE account. So let's say that I inherit, I get a nice gift from Grandma. She left in her will, she left me $10,000, okay? In the past, all I could do with the $10,000 is A, spend it, or two, have an attorney create a special needs trust for me, but I'm going to use some of the $10,000 to pay the attorney, and then I'm going to, have to go through a lot. By the time I get all done, there's not $10,000 left. So why is the ABLE such a great tool? I inherit some money, and it's going to make me lose my SSI and my Medicaid, even more importantly. So I can now take the $10,000 and put it in an ABLE account for myself. Okay. I see somebody had the question, what does QDT mean when we're talking about third-party trust? And the answer was for you, Qualified Disability Trust, QDT. Sorry, I should have explained that. So a third-party trust has special taxation, and it's a special kind of trust that is set up for a person with a disability, Qualified Disability Trust, that's the term. Okay, is there a limit to funding that we can put into any of these trusts? None. The only one that has a limit, again, is the ABLE, and that $100,000 limit is only pertinent to SSI, and it's that $15,000 a year that can go in up to $100,000. Who controls these accounts? Who's the controller? The third-party trust is controlled by not the person. So I'm the person with a disability, and I've got a third-party trust. Okay, I don't control it. The reason that the special needs trusts work is because I cannot control it. Somebody else is my trustee. But the ABLE account is nice because I can control it. The person with a disability controls their account. If there's a third-party trust and there's a small amount of money, it's not very efficient, okay? Trusts mean it's legal fees. I'm probably not going to open an account with a little bit of money for a special needs trust, unless somebody's going to put $1,000 a month away for the rest of their life and they really want it to be long-term money. But an ABLE account is a great account where you're going to put very small amounts in. It's very efficient. And no account has tax-free savings except for an ABLE account. Okay? Okay, I'm going to go through a couple of questions as we're going so that I can keep up because people are asking them as we go. Could someone take the money from a GoFundMe that was raised for them that would otherwise put them over the SSI limit and put it into an ABLE account? Absolutely. Okay, yes, an absolutely answer. So any money that I have the person with a disability and someone is raising money for me, and that money is stopping me, and in the past I would have had to create a first-party trust for that to go into, or have set up the third-party trust that those people are directly putting the money into. Now I can open up an ABLE account. Remember, though, it's $15,000 a year limit. And you have to watch if you have SSI, so it doesn't go over that. Be free to type your questions. I'm happy to answer them. Okay, so what are the two limitations? I mentioned one so far. The SSI suspension if the account exceeds $100,000. And I will tell you, everything we're talking about now is how the rules stand now, and there's changes, and we'll talk about them. So, the SSI is suspended when the account hits $100,000. So suspended is different than canceled. So I have SSI coming in, my account goes over 100. I would want to spend some of that to bring it back to 100,000 so my SSI goes back into play. I don't have to reapply, I just have to know that it's going to be stopped, and my check's going to be stopped until I get it back down. Second, there's a payback at death upon the person with a disability. So if I pass away, Medicaid can get reimbursed for money that is spent on my medical expenses and my whatever Medicaid is paying from the date of the account setup. I will tell you that rule is in flux by state. So when it was first initiated, the legislation said yes, if I set mine, and the payback is different, which is why I showed you the first party trust. Because remember I said the first party trust said if I got a settlement, let's say I got $1 million settlement, it goes into the first party trust, okay? The first party trust would go back, if I passed away, it would go back to the date, the very first time I became disabled. Anything Medicaid spent from very beginning time could get reimbursed out of that trust. This works a little differently. It's a payback on Medicaid from the time that I set up the account, the ABLE account, okay? And there's a lot of discussion and clarity coming. So when I talk about this, the Medicaid payback is different by state. Someone said that Medicaid payback is no longer in effect here in Florida as a recent law passed. Exactly. So I was talking about how it started, and now what happens is a lot of states are coming back saying the state is not going to take a payback at death. Some states are only taking a payback at death at the federal level. So if the federal government gives the state money, and that money is used at the state level, they're only going required to pay back what federal government funds came in, but the state is not coming back after theirs. Some states are not going back after anything. So just a clarity there that this is in flux in many, many states on the payback portion. And I would not use it as a reason to not do this, because I think over time we'll see a lot of changes. I'm going to answer a couple more questions that have come in before I go to the next topic. Question from John. Although the PWD controls the ABLE, can they have a joint owner to help them? There can be someone on the account often to help, like a custodian. So don't worry about that. If the person with a disability cannot handle on their own, someone else can be on the account with them. Okay? And then Charles let me know that payback is no longer in effect here in Florida as of a recent law passed. Laws are passing on this thing very quickly. I just wanted to let you know, okay? And finally, Amy said, is a contribution to an ABLE account tax deductible for the person who contributes some money? Again, that's going to be by state. So each state is going to have limitations, and I can't cover all 50 states on here, so I'm going to tell you that each state has their own rules, and I'm going to tell you where to go to look for your state, okay? So that it'll be clear to you if it's a deductible expense or not, and when you contribute, okay? All right. And then Charles just mentioned it goes to the owner's estate. Now it just goes to the owner's estate. Okay. So if the person passes away, it goes to their estate. All right. A lot of things. I'm glad you're piping in with things that is happening in your states. Okay. Some updates happened in 2018. So up to this point, I've kind of told you what happened in 2017. In 2018, that's when the 14,000 went to 15,000. A couple other rules have changed since then. In 2018, they updated it so that people who had 529 set up for their child or person with a disability, that money can be rolled over at the 15,000 a year still limit, into an ABLE. So you can roll a 529 into an ABLE. So I have many people who started funding 529s thinking it would be used for college. If the person's still going to college, I don't think, if they were going to college, I would maybe keep it there, because 529s aren't typically owned if it's a child. They aren't typically owned by them. If it was my own account, I might have it owned by me. So remember, benefits, especially SSI and Medicaid, here's about who owns it. So when I'm working with a family and they have a 18-year-old family member, and they've been putting college money away in a 529, that's typically not owned by the 18-year-old. It's typically owned by the parents. So I would be careful about wanting to transfer those quickly. I would want to make sure that if I thought they were going to be going to school, I kept it in the 529, but if they were never going to go to school, I would try to transfer it into the ABLE, but I have to be careful because I still have the $15,000 a year limit. Okay, but it is something that we can do, and people, the minute it passed, people want to know, I got a 529, can I roll it over? Okay. There is a question, are there pending attempts to make so people get disabled at a later age can have this? Yes, there is. Okay. Attempts meaning legislation. So yes, there is. It's been tested already. I don't know where it stands exactly today, but I don't see anything on the immediate horizon at this point. And if I do, I will make sure to let the foundation know so that we can let everybody know. Okay, there's a saver's credit. When people put money into retirement accounts, there's a credit on a tax return that this 529 contribution, the ABLE 529, they're called 529A, by the way. The 529A contributions also qualify for the retirement savings credit. And then there's been another nice new benefit that the Able to Work Act, which passed in 2018, says not only can $15,000 go into the account, but if the person with a disability works, they can take their work income and also contribute that on top of it to a maximum of $12,040. The asterisk there is because it's a little bit different by state, so be careful on your state. But so if someone is working and they can't work full time, they have a disability, then they have some income, but that income, so when you put money into the ABLE, it doesn't reduce your income. And sometimes there's a lot of confusion because there's a very different thing between income and assets. The ABLE account helps with assets. So if someone is making money, I've had people say, okay, can I make more of that? No. If you're going to lose your benefits, first of all, if you could make more, and you're doing it because you want to work more, that's a whole different issue, right? But in this case, if somebody is worried about their SSI going away or their Medicaid going away, and they could work a little more, but it would put them over the edge of how much income they can have to not lose their benefits. This is not a tool for that. This is just not a tool that if you are making money and you don't want it to accumulate into the $2,000 for your account, you're able to take what you made and move it into this account over and above the $15,000. So I can keep my account since I'm making something and I have some money in my checking account, and then I make this money. I can move my $12,140 of my earnings, and I can also take my $15,000 I'm allowed. So the person who has a disability, if they're the only one funding it, could put $15,000 from savings and $12,140 from earnings. But typically we're seeing the $12,000 coming up to $12,000 coming from someone's work, and the $15,000 coming from other people, if that makes sense. Okay. A couple more questions I'm going to ask before I go to the next topic. Is there some way, as a disabled person, that we could request that the government consider raising age requirements for this? I think there's a lot of people working on it. You certainly could contact your legislator. Oh, sorry, I'm going to turn off my phone here. There's some way that you could contact your legislator and see if they can support it. Okay. I've been on disability for 25 years, and I'm 60 years old, and it's horrifying that I lost my house. I would have no way to save up money without losing all my benefits. Yes, that is unfortunate, and I think if they raise the age on this, they're probably talking in the 40s. I don't think they're going to go beyond that. So I know that the government doesn't help us when we're older, and I'm sorry that you're in that situation. There are some things that if we have a home Because remember, a home is a protected asset if you're getting benefits, but they can't make you sell your house, but if you can't live. The other thing about a house, that if you have someone in your family that is helping take care of you, there's a way to save the home. Okay. If an ABLE account owner passes away and is in a state with no Medicaid payback, who can inherit the funds? Where, how, specific is an option. So some states it goes back to the estate, and some states actually have some beneficiaries on it. So you'll want to check on your account. And if you do have an ABLE, you probably would want to have a simple will, if possible. Okay. Okay. Someone said they're still having 0 audio, so I know this is, I'm pretty sure this is being recorded, and you'll be able to listen to it again after it's been displayed. Okay, let's talk about how I see this kind of being used. That's simple. First, third-party money. So someone wants to give you a gift. You can only have $2,000 because you're on Medicaid, you're on SSI. Now the person who wants to give you the gift could make the gift into the ABLE account. Makes sense. You open the ABLE account and let people know that's where they can fund things for you. The other thing is if someone doesn't have very much money but they want to leave you something, they don't have to have their own will. They can leave it in an estate. If parents don't have very much but they have a small amount, they can leave it into a will. Some simple solutions. First-party money. First-party means my money. So in the past, we talked about getting a small inheritance. So if I inherited a small amount of money from someone, I don't have to go to court. I don't have to get an attorney. I don't have to do those things. I can take that first-party money, my money, and put it into the ABLE. Or small settlements. I get a small settlement. I could take that small settlement and put it into the account. And then thirdly, I'm earning, and so I'm earning money, some money, and I want to save it. In the past, we had to spend it. I can save it now. I can save it. I can actually take the savings and I put it into the ABLE. So it's additional savings. So I call it like a disability IRA, if you want to think about it that way. Remember I mentioned dangers? I mentioned dangers. Why do I say that? A couple of reasons. Well, I would tell you when this first came about, I was a little worried too, because I know in the end, because it's an investment, okay? It's a way you save. And sometimes investment people look at things and see it as another way to make money on people, and I'm always worried about that. I'm an investment person. So I see that in every industry there's good and bad. So I wanted to make sure that people weren't going to be susceptible of someone knocking on their door and trying to sell them something. But these are not sold to you by an advisor. These are at the state level. So let me just address that for a minute. If you want one, you can't go to a bank and you can't go to an investment house, okay? So what happened when these came about was that each state, had to say, I'm going to do it, okay, or not do it. There are some states that don't have 529As. The state had to make the decision they're going to do it or not do it. Then once they decided they were going to do it or not do it, they had to decide how they were going to do it when they decided to do it. So if you're in a state, you have to know A, does my state have one? B, if my state doesn't have one, is there another state I can use? Okay? So if my state doesn't have one, I want to go find another state that has a good plan. And so what do you have to know about that state? You have to know, will the state that you want to use allow a non-resident? So A, pick a plan that allows a non-resident to go into the plan. You can use any state like that. The state I'm in actually has 15 other states with it. I think it's 15 now. And so they went out and created a consortium of states that wanted to use this. And they were able to, get really good fee structures because of that. Once the state decides they're going to use it, and they decide they're going to let other people in other states use it, then they had to negotiate with investment houses, because inside this account, there are options of a checking account. Each state's different, but there could be a checking account, there could be a savings account portion of it, there could be a debit card on the account, they might give you checks on the account, lots of different things that you can have. Then they have investment choices. So some of them I'm familiar with have checking, savings, a debit card, Debit card's pretty nice. So here's a person who's getting disability and they're not supposed to have a lot of money, but they have a debit card that they can go buy things they need, as long as they're buying things that are legitimate in that whole scheme of things. And then there's investments. So some of them have investment portfolios. What do you want to also understand about the program you use? You want to make sure that you've got, that there's a checking and how it works. Many of them, if they have checking, the bank associated with them doesn't have any overdraft charges. That's kind of nice. And you'd want to understand the investments. So it's like any investment portfolio. You'd want to know, do I want to have it invested for long-term, short-term? How much money do I need? What do I need it from? So dangers is not understanding the rules, not understanding how to use it, not communicating, and so you have one and then a family member tries to set one up for you, lack of understanding how to use it and how many, overfunding it beyond what you can have, and then you're probably going to get letters, you can't do it, you got too much in it, knowing that the SSI could be suspended and that there could be a payback at death. So what's hard about teaching this is that every state has their own little rules. So I want to give you the overall general rules, and then I'll give you a place to check on your state. So your state has a plan. Go on the list go to the website that I'm going to give you and check your state. If eligible, you can use it, okay? But if your state doesn't have a plan, then you go to another state's plan if that state allows it. And some states can restrict outside users. So I know some states don't allow anybody from another state to use it. You'd also want to check, what does it cost to use this, okay? So here's some places where you can look and research all the different types of things. So what are you going to find on there? You're going to find on the ABLE National Resource Center, it's a great site that shows the list of all the things that you can use this money for and still follow the rules. It's a great place. It's going to tell you all the stuff I said today in a little more detail if you want to look it up for your state. And it's going to have a place where it compares the programs by state. Okay? So ABLENRC.org, nationalresourcecenter.org, is the main site where it's going to tell you all about it. And that same site /state_compare is going to, so if your state doesn't have one and you say, well, where should I go? You'll be able to go to look at all the different programs. Now, each one of the states is going to tell you, what does it have to offer? If you find one and it goes into a lot of detail and you say, wow, this one looks good, then go to that state's plan and read about it, okay? Find out what it's all about. You're also going to see in there, does that state offer you a state deduction on your return, okay? Now be careful if you're getting a special incentive to do it for the state and you're living in Ohio, and you're going to use Illinois plan, and Illinois gives you a credit on your taxes, a deduction on your taxes for that contribution. But you live in Ohio. It doesn't apply to Ohio. So you've got to know, look at your own states first, okay? Because that's where you're going to have the benefit of any kind of tax benefit you can get. And then if your state doesn't offer one, okay, now you got to go to different states. But look at your own state first. After you look at your own state, I would look and say, wow, I got a good one here, and I can get some tax benefits, not only just federal taxes, but at the state level. What are the costs of the plan? What do they cost to have the plan? What are they going to charge me? What kind of investments can I make in that plan? What are the costs of those investments? Okay, the consortium that I'm familiar with, that has a lot of states in it, the investment costs are very, very low. If you compare it to what you might pay an investment manager, because they're counting on a lot of people getting into this, the costs are pretty low. Okay. All right. Here's a question. My son has a disability and is switching from SSI to my Social Security, going into DAC. Since I just retired, he'll be getting $1,400 a month, paid retroactively from now back to February, which will put him over the 2,000 cap. Will he get bumped off? Okay, so if he's going from SSI into disability. He no longer has the SSI limitation, so first of all, he can have more than 100,000. He's not going to have that SSI limitation. Will he get bumped off his Medicaid? An ABLE account would protect him. Okay, yes. So if he's getting too much, then you're going to put that extra money into the account. Now, if it's the income that's counting against him, that won't help him. Okay, he may have a spend down, but you'll have to check that out. But if you're worried about his assets getting too high, yes, the money can go into an ABLE, and that will protect him on the Medicaid side. I hope that helps that question. Is state tax governed by rules of the state where you have the account, or your home state, or both? The state tax is governed by rules of the state where you have the account. Okay, so I'm not sure I'm answering that right. If I'm in Illinois, only state that's going to give me a benefit is the Illinois plan. If I use the Ohio plan and fund the Ohio plan, I'm not going to get a benefit in my state. I'm going to get the federal benefit. I'm not going to get the state benefit. Utah isn't listed on the ABLE state compare. Does that mean there isn't available in Utah? I think that I heard that Utah does not have an account. It does not have an ABLE. It should be clear in there, but if Utah's not there, I'm sure it means they don't. Sorry, dang. I will tell you, the consortium plans are really good, and a lot of states don't offer state tax credits, tax benefits, so I wouldn't be too concerned if your state doesn't have one. There's a lot of them that do. And just because your state doesn't have it now doesn't mean they won't have it. Okay. Is there a cost? Okay. Accounts vary by state. The fees change. They have different rates for non-residents, so check that as well. Okay. So, and when you're using the investments, it's just like any other thing that you're going to do investing with. You should know, is this money for short-term or long-term? Okay. Find that out. So if you're funding it and you're saying, okay, we're going to fund this ABLE because we want our family member to have it for 10 years from now, you're probably going to choose different investments. And if you're saying I'm going to put something in, you can spread the accounts over the different types of investments. So going through a good process of what is this money going to do, be like if you're asking me about your retirement and you're 20, you're going to do something different than if you're 40 or 60. So what's the life expectancy? When is this money going to be used? The other thing you should know is when I'm setting up one for my son, who's now 30, and he became disabled at the age of 21. He has an ABLE account, and I'm hoping to put most of the money for the long term for him, but he does need some money on a regular basis. So one of the neat things it's used for is he has a special needs trust as well. Okay, but the special needs trust cannot pay rent. Special needs trust is not allowed to pay basic support. The ABLE account can pay rent. So in the past, when my son he's in an apartment, but his disability check is hardly enough to pay his rent and all his food and all the stuff he needs. And so it was a problem. We always had that problem. And so now, and the special needs trust can't pay rent. So now I can contribute every year to his ABLE account, and he can use that money to help him stay in his apartment. He can help pay his rent, and then he can use his money for food and other things. So it's very efficient to do that. But I need to make sure when I'm helping him with it, so he's the owner, but I'm on the account with him to help him use it and help him learn about it. But he also has a special needs trust. So I'm in funding right now his account for him. What if something happens to me? How am I going to make sure that his ABLE account gets funded? So his special needs trust has language in it that says the trustee will have the authority to move money from his special needs trust into his ABLE account as necessary. So if you're going to use the special needs trust to provide any funding to the ABLE, it's really important that you talk to an attorney that you would like it to do that and make sure in your state that you're allowed to do that. Okay. Someone else asks, how do you find out about the consortium plans? Could Utah participate in that? You will know, you would find it on the state, if Utah participated, you would see that Utah was participating in that. So if Utah's plan looks like the same, they're just using the tools, the investment and all that. So Illinois is in it, Minneapolis, some other states are Minnesota, some other states are in that consortium. It's just they're all kind of using the same tools that are eligible for that. Okay? All right, we don't have so much time. I want to wrap up on a couple things. You open an account, not what? Track your expenses, okay? If you're using the money, you're contributing to it is one thing. When you start taking it out, track it. Build something that you know what you spent it on, because they can come back and ask you, remember I said it's tax-free if you use it for allowable expenses. So as you take money out, create a little tracking mechanism for yourself, however you do it, so that you'll be able to show how you used it. Decide how it best fits. Make sure that the plan you select fits your needs and the investment choices you're making fits those needs. So the money that my son needs for rent is for now, but the other money he needs for other things later are for later. So his account is being managed with some short-term and long-term investment choices. If you're not really good with money, ask your investment advisor to help you do some of that. They can't help you set it up, but they certainly can give you some advice. So I think we're wrapping up, and I'm going to see if there's any more questions as we go. But a couple of things to think about. One, be proactive. Keep up with. So the things I told you today, it's what exists today. Tomorrow, who knows what will happen, okay? Things may change. They've changed a lot in regard to this legislation and to these accounts. Maybe your state doesn't have one, and maybe they will. So be aware. We are trying on our newsletter to try to post things so that if people, as things change, we try to let people know that things have changed. Watch the 2 websites that I gave you access to. Those also will have new things that have changed. Pay attention to your state, see if that changes. Clarification of the rules will continue. There's always a lot of questions about, can I use it for this? And the questions get clarified. And I'm sure that Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation will also, if things change a lot, it would be we'll encourage them to do another one to keep you updated. And so I hope that's helpful there. Any more questions? There were some really good questions during the session. I hope, we went through a lot of things in a pretty short period of time. Do look up your state. The things I'll leave you with is do go to those sites I gave you. Let me pull those up as we're wrapping here so you can see them. There's the Resource Center, which has the general information, and then the tool to compare the state programs. Question, will parents get a tax break if they give $15,000 to their son's table? Again, that depends upon your state. So if you are in your state's plan and your state so there's the federal, when you say tax break, the only federal benefit is that the account isn't taxed. The state tax break is based on the state plan, okay? And someone just said, Utah status, signed into law, program and development. I knew there wasn't one yet, because I know that we used the Utah one for college education, and I knew they didn't have the 529. That's good. Some of the states are taking some time. Some states did it really quickly. So they're working on a plan. So that's good for the person who, Amy, I think, was the one who wanted it. Do I have to set up an ABLE account online, or can I do it in person? It's online, or are there some forms? So you can go onto the site, and then you can pull on the forms and you can do it. I don't think there's any place you can go in person. There's no bank to go to unless your state has something special set up. But most of them, it's very easy to do online. I'm 24 at onset of Social Security, but disabled prior. It's the disability onset, not Social Security. So if you had the disability prior, you can certainly use the ABLE account. Yes. If funds are transferred from ABLE to special needs trust, are they taxed as disbursement from the trust? Yeah, I wouldn't be going from the ABLE account to a special needs trust. Because this is the confusion there. The ABLE can come from first or third party. And so you won't be able to distinguish if it's coming out of the ABLE as a first party money or third party money, because it could be put in and so to me, it can't go into a third party trust. If I took my money, my work money or settlement money, and put it into the ABLE, I can't take it and put it into a third party trust. So you can't go backwards. Okay. Is there any way for me to legally save money? Hi, if we already have a special needs trust, there are usually stipulations on spending. How can you transfer monies from a special needs trust to an ABLE? I would contact your attorney on that one. Your special needs trust would have to allow you to do that. So I would contact the attorney to set up your special needs trust. Okay. Will there be savings available for me in the future? Well, this is what the ABLE is. So it's a way to save, and I think this is really good news. I think that we can do that. Okay. Valerie said, okay, you wanted to know if you can go from you asked me from the ABLE to the special needs. Can you go from the special needs trust to the ABLE? That depends how your special needs trust is drafted. So again, go back to the attorney. Another one, if I was 34 when I got Social Security but was disabled back in my 20s, could I self-certify for an ABLE? Yes, you can. Okay. If you have any kind of diagnosis any kind of proof, doctor's records or anything, the chance of having a problem with that is slim. Can I use money to purchase a home? I know you could pay rent. You can use it that's a really good question, and I'm not exactly sure of the answer, but I will get it back to Christopher Dana Reeve Foundation to verify that. I know you can use it for rent, but I don't know if you can, because otherwise if you use the money I'll have to find out. I'm not going to answer that question without knowing the exact answer. Okay. Are there taxes? The income, Valerie said, are there taxes? Again, the money inside that grows is not taxed if you use the money per the rules. If you don't use it per the rules, the income will be taxed. Okay? Is there a list of qualified expenses can be referenced somewhere? Yes. Go to the ABLE nrc.org. ABLE National Resource Center, ABLE nrc.org. And on that site, you will find all of the qualified expenses. And when I say all, it's all the ones that they can think about. It doesn't mean that you don't have something that wouldn't be eligible. You can look at the categories. Okay. ablenrc.org, and the compare is ablenrc.org, state_compare. Any more questions? I try to keep up with all of that. I'm really glad you all had questions. It was great. I think we're at our time limit. Thank you all for participating. And if we get updates, I will make sure to let the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation know so that we can keep you informed as well. I enjoyed my time with you. Thank you very much. And I look forward to doing another session with you in the near future. Everyone have a great holiday weekend coming up. 4th of July. Thanks. Bye.
Once again, that does conclude our call for today. Thank you for your participation. You may now disconnect.